Argentina have swept the FIFA The Best awards, obviously with Messi winning the Best Men's Player award, Emi Martinez winning Best Goalkeeper of the Year, and Scaloni winning the Best Manager of the Year. So we're gonna go ahead and start with Messi winning the Best Men's Player award. G, do you think Messi deserved this award?
I don't have much of a problem with Messi winning it. I think as much as this award is kind of martyred by heavy recency bias, what Messi had to do to win the World Cup is obviously unprecedented. It's something we, might never ever see again. A player do that much in contributing to winning a World Cup, and he beat out Mbappe and Benzema. But the more problem I have with the award was not that Messi won it, just Benzema's placement. Just because the recency bias of how Mbappe performed, just realistically, the only huge game he had was in the final that's vaulted him over Benzema, the guy who won the Ballon d'Or, the guy that actually beat both of these two in the Champions League in the knockouts around the 16. I bet it's a bit ridiculous, that people have already somewhat forgotten what Benzema did, and this award has a lot to do with what happened last season. But to each be their own. Messi, I think, deserved it because he was by far the best player in the world at that time, winning the World Cup. So I mean, I don't have a huge problem with it.
Yeah, look, for in terms of Messi winning it, I think that Messi thoroughly deserved this award. I mean, to be honest, you could say that throughout the every season of Messi's career that he's deserved the best men's player award because he's probably been the best player since he started playing football. So it's one of those things. Messi has consistently been the best player in the world. He's the greatest player of all time. So I don't have much of an issue with Messi winning this award. I think that obviously, if he hadn't won the World Cup, that he wouldn't even be in the top three, to be honest. But him winning the World Cup and doing it how he did catapulted him above Benzema and above Mbappe and ultimately got him this award. And I think it was deserved because, like you said, this was one of the most historic World Cup runs of all time, maybe the best World Cup run of all time, and something we might never see again. And also, it's a lot of these things like awards with the media, it's narrative driven. And Messi ultimately had the best narrative and obviously the most recent narrative, winning the World Cup. I mean, it's basically it was his award to lose at that point, and ultimately
Yeah.
that's why this is a conversation for another day. But I think this is also why he's going to win his eighth Ballon d'Or ultimately because the World Cup is just so big in magnitude that you basically can't there's no other trophy or nothing else any other player could do that would make that better than what Messi did because ultimately he won the World Cup. That's the biggest trophy in football, the biggest trophy in sports.
Yeah, I mean, it's I still think it's unfortunate for Benzema just because it just so happened to be a World Cup year. You have one of the best seasons of your entire career, and this kind of just overshadows it because I mean, it's like caught in that weird middle because if there was no World Cup, then obviously it goes to Benzema. I mean, people are still going off what happened in the Champions League last year because that's usually how it
That's
goes. I
usually
mean,
how it works. Yeah.
it coincides with each other. Who wins the Ballon d'Or usually wins the best. I mean, the only time that didn't happen was when I think 2019 when Van Dijk actually won the best, and then Messi won the Ballon d'Or.
Yeah.
So I mean, it doesn't always match up the same, but for the most part, it does. But obviously, due to the World Cup and Messi playing such a big role in it, look, I'm not gonna come on here and try and say Messi doesn't deserve it
Yeah. Yeah.
because God, what my heart had to go through to watch that. Even as a Madrid fan, look, I'm always gonna have such immense respect for Lionel Messi, but I think my problem was with Benzema not at least getting second. How I don't know how Mbappe sneaked past him. I
Yeah.
don't know if he secretly won the World Cup too or something. I don't know, but I strictly
Yeah.
remember Benzema sending him home
Yeah, I would
in the
say
round of
I agree
16.
with that. I think that Benzema, he definitely should have been second in this award. And I don't quite know how Mbappe did get over him on that because realistically, all Mbappe did was have a hat trick in a World Cup final. And I think it's the recency bias factor that ultimately catapulted him above Benzema. But this is for 2022. I mean, I know it's we're 2 months, almost 3 months into 2023, but people need to remember that this award is supposed to be covering 2022 only. So
Yeah, it's
obviously the World Cup is included in that, but when people are voting for this award, it's the recency bias that ultimately got Mbappe over Benzema. Because if you look at the entire year, Benzema had a legendary year. Not only what he was able to do carrying Real Madrid to a Champions League victory, but ultimately one of the greatest Champions League runs of all time, if not the greatest. With every single comeback and beating Chelsea, PSG, Man City,
Man
and the
City and then
Liverpool in the
Liverpool in the
final.
final.
It's literally something that might never be done again. I mean, it was legendary and it was probably the best season of Benzema's career by far. And I think he's a little bit unfortunate, because like you said, it just happened to fall on a World Cup year, and
Hmm.
that recency bias of the World Cup just kind of
and
made
Benzema
Benzema not
wasn't,
win.
yeah, and he wasn't fit enough to be able to play it.
Exactly.
And you know, the French team didn't even want him there. So I mean, it's
Yeah,
there's a
and
bunch of factors.
they
It's
still did good
unfortunate.
without him. So I
They
think
did
people
they
are
did
like, oh well,
they did really
Benzema
well.
he wasn't needed and things like that.
Yeah, but I don't strictly agree with that. I have a bigger problem with a award that we're gonna probably talk about next.
Yeah, so obviously, Emi Martinez, goalkeeper, obviously for Argentina, also winning the World Cup, but also for Aston Villa. I think this is the first time an Aston Villa player has ever won any kind of award like this. Obviously,
Aston Villa's won anything.
yeah, yeah, well, at least for a very long time. But Emi Martinez wins the Best Goalkeeper of the Year award, and obviously he won this over Thibaut Courtois and Alisson. So I'm going to pose the question to you: what was your thoughts on this, and was it deserved?
This one, okay. I'll let the Messi one slide, but this one's disgraceful. I don't know how Emi Martinez has somehow sneaked by Courtois. I mean, for the legendary season Courtois had in 2022, I mean, this guy had the greatest Champions League final performance for a goalkeeper of all time, the most saves recorded in history. I mean, he was absolute. I mean, to say he was a key factor is an understatement to why we did that Champions League run we did, because he was, when in doubt, the best when we needed him. He was arguably our second best player behind Benzema. He carried us almost all that way. And then when we needed him in the final to perform the best, he did. And look, I'm not saying Emi Martinez isn't great, but let's just be real. I mean, his save percentages in the World Cup were not good. He was scored on consistently. I mean, that's not what he had huge moments. He had that huge stop at the what was the 119th minute
Yeah,
to
basically the last minute
to
of the
basically
game.
to save them, to send them to the penalties. But look, his numbers, his save percentage weren't that good, and arguably, I mean, even you did not pick him as the best goalkeeper in the World Cup. You
Yeah,
picked Dominik Livakovic, the Croatian goalkeeper, and look, it was a toss up, because look, he was the goalkeeper on the winning team, but he did not perform the best through and throughout. He had a very good final. Obviously, he was a penalty specialist. He stopped, he's the most dominant penalty stopper we've seen in a very long time. But
hmm
to completely overshadow what Courtois did throughout the entirety of that season, through that legendary Champions League run, and his form in the league. I mean, we won La Liga, won the Champions League. I mean, we he basically won almost everything that was meant to be important in that season. I mean, I don't know how Emmys won it over him, but it's the recency bias. It's gonna
yeah.
it's gonna basically run the show.
I wholeheartedly agree. Like I can banter you off camera and say that Martinez deserved it, blah blah blah. But no, in all reality, Thibaut Courtois was absolutely robbed. This guy had one of the best years a goalkeeper could possibly have. He won the Champions League, and he not only won the Champions League, he was the second best player, arguably. Him and Vinny were neck and neck, I would say, for
I
Real
think he
Madrid.
got top 10 in Ballon d'Or. Like
Yeah,
this is almost ridiculous.
Courtois had an absolutely legendary year. What he did in the Champions League final, I think people have already forgotten the fact that Liverpool were very dominant in that final, and Courtois kept them in the game. And then Vinicius kind of scored a goal against the run of play. And I mean, Courtois was the reason why Real Madrid were able to keep a clean sheet, keep one of the greatest attacks of all time. But that Liverpool attack is absolutely incredible, and he kept him. He kept him quiet, he slammed the door shut. I mean, it was literally a brick wall over the goal in the Champions League final. And that was all down to Courtois. Courtois is no doubt the best goalkeeper in the world right now. He was the best goalkeeper in the world last year, and he showed that time and time again. And I don't really know how Emi Martinez won this award, because obviously I know he was part of the World Cup winning team, and I'm not going to act like he didn't have good moments in the World Cup. I mean, obviously he had recorded one of the greatest saves of all time. I mean, that shot on Kolomuani, we see it time and time again now. I mean, that was literally one of the best saves of all time, one of the most important saves of all time. But outside of that, and then, being very good in penalty shootouts, he got scored on consistently. His save percentage was not that good in the World Cup. So I look back on this World Cup and I say, obviously, Argentina as a whole, they deserved it. And he played a big role in that. But I don't think he did enough to overtake Courtois. I think Courtois thoroughly deserved this award. And I think he was just kind of robbed in this case. Like, I really don't know what FIFA were thinking. You know what I mean? I don't know what the players were thinking, because this is a player voted award.
Well, it's all comes down to it's what like most sticks in your memory. The reset. I mean we're gonna repeat that over and over again, but it's just what recently happened more. Whether the players remember more fondly as of right now. Everybody remembers the World Cup and what Emmy did. So I mean, it is how it's gonna be. I mean, I'm not gonna start a fire over it, but I just do think Courtois was like kind of passed up on that one.
I think he was robbed. I mean, I think it's daylight robbery. If you look at the other ones, the other awards, I think they at least it was more of a debate. It was a real competition, and obviously Argentina swept them. But this one, look, Martinez is nowhere near as good of a goalkeeper as Courtois. I mean, there's a reason he's at Aston Villa at the end of the day. I mean, it's just what
Yeah,
it
man.
is. But obviously, I think the third and final award that we'll talk about, and then obviously the World 11 that got announced. So Lionel Scaloni winning Manager of the Year, I think over Ancelotti, and I think Pep it was. So what did
Yeah.
you think about this award? Do you think Scaloni deserved it, or maybe Ancelotti should have got it?
I think this one should have still went to Ancelotti. I think because obviously Scaloni, what he did to transform this Argentina team is it's absolutely remarkable. But this Argentina team was already very good going into that World Cup. I mean, they just had won the Copa America and they won what was it, La Finalissima against Italy. So I mean, there wasn't a much like change that happened between there. It's a because I'm trying to compare it to when Ancelotti picked up this Real Madrid team from when he arrived. I mean, this Real Madrid team was just not that good. I mean, realistically, they just were not. And Ancelotti was able to steady the ship. And I mean, there was so much people that were talking about, oh, Ancelotti, his tactics don't work anymore. They're too old school. They're not going to work. And he was able to be a big orchestrator in the greatest Champions League run of all time. I mean, I'm going to be saying this. I'm going to beat the drum over here. That is the greatest Champions League run of all time. And Ancelotti was absolutely a huge key factor. He won the league title. I mean, this is a guy that made this Real Madrid team into what they are right now, like a team that never say die, that don't quit, that have the greatest comebacks ever. And look, I'm not super mad about this one, as I was kind of annoyed by the Courtois one because obviously Scaloni had to do a lot. I mean, after losing to Saudi Arabia, to rally the troops and be able to make the right changes. He made big game changes and many ties, especially against the Netherlands. How they switch up to three in the back, they run a four. Look, there's a lot of things he did, but I just think Carlo Ancelotti did more, and
Mhm.
obviously it's going to get overlooked because of the World Cup. But I think Ancelotti deserved a shout to have a better chance to win that.
Yeah, look, I think that this one was kind of 50-50 in my mind because obviously we know what Ancelotti did this year. I mean, he won ultimately, led Real Madrid to the double, La Liga and the Champions League. And ultimately, like you said, it was the greatest Champions League run of all time. And he was literally the spearhead of that because I don't think many people expected Real Madrid to even get past the round of 16, much less win that. I mean, because they got
I mean,
drawn against
oh,
PSG.
I mean, yeah,
So I think that ultimately this is no disrespect to Ancelotti because I think Ancelotti is one of the greatest managers, if not potentially the greatest manager of all time. I think his resume stacks up that good at this point in his career. But I think Scaloni did deserve this. And ultimately why I think Scaloni deserved this over Ancelotti. Ancelotti did all he could. I mean, he literally won pretty much everything he could have won. But I think what Scaloni did, it just manager of the year to me, it comes down to more than potentially just the trophies, but how much of an impact you have on the side. And I'm not saying Ancelotti didn't have a big impact on the side, but what Scaloni did in the World Cup, we saw how they started out losing to Saudi Arabia, and they played a considerably weaker XI compared to when they ended. They Scaloni tactically he brought in Enzo Fernandez, he changed that 11 and to suit the team better. So I think ultimately Scaloni's ability to change the game with substitutions and not be afraid to make big changes like bringing in Enzo Fernandez and making him a full-time starter in the World Cup. That was part of the reason, if not the reason, why Argentina were able to win this tournament. Because I think obviously if they never changed the starting 11 and they stuck with the same 11 that they did with Saudi Arabia, they wouldn't have won the World Cup. They might have not even made it out the groups. But his ability to change the starting 11 and change the game with substitutions throughout that tournament, I think was a big factor for Argentina winning that. And ultimately, we all remember I can't remember the manager's name, but the managers that were at Argentina previous to Scaloni were basically unable to win anything.
well,
I think it was
forget
I
his
forget
name.
his name, the bald guy. I forget his name, but
Yeah, I forget his name at the moment. It's just in
consistently,
my
in
head.
my opinion, we talked about it before. Like this was before we had a channel or anything, but Argentina had fraudulent managers consistently throughout Messi's tenure, and ultimately Scaloni came in and then won the Copa America, won Finalissima, and now obviously won the World Cup. And I know it comes down to the recency bias, ultimately why he might have won this, but I think Scaloni deserved this. I'm not up in arms about it. I'm not really, like, oh, we got to get the pitchforks out and light him
Yeah,
on fire and start riots in the street. But I think it was a really 50-50 award. It could have went either way, but I'm not mad at Scaloni winning it because I think he did deserve it and he did prove himself as one of, if not the best manager in the world in 2022.
yeah. I mean, these are the two I think are the two best managers in the world. It was a real 50-50, and I mean, Ancelotti did a lot of the same things that Scaloni did. I mean, you saw him how he made his substitutions at the perfect time when he put in Camavinga at the perfect time to where, he's running the show. He's able to go in their entire legs, and obviously he made the substitution for Rodrigo to come on and score two of the biggest goals in club history. I mean, at the Bernabeu
Yeah.
against Man City in like 2 minutes. So I mean, these are two managers that know how to make the right call at the right times. I mean, they use substitutions to perfection. I
Mhm.
haven't seen a lot of managers be able to do that and be able to game manage as they do. I mean, these are the two best in the world. I'm not gonna, it's like splitting hairs who's
Yeah.
better, but like I said,
Once again, it came down to the recency bias.
yeah, and like I said, Ancelotti had the greatest Champions League run of all time, but arguably Scaloni had the greatest World Cup run of all time. I mean,
Hmm.
it's definitely up there, and but when you're comparing the World Cup to Champions League, the World Cup
World
wins.
Cup's
So
gonna
I
win
mean,
every day.
World Cup's
Yeah.
gonna win.
Yeah. So obviously, that pretty much wraps up the awards part of it, and then we just wanted to touch on the World 11 that got announced. Obviously, every single year. I mean, this is one of the most illustrious awards you can win. I mean, making the best 11 in the world. So obviously, this year they introduced a new formation. Typically, it's a 4-3-3, but this year it's a three
This some
three
FIFA shit.
four. And this is some shit you don't. This formation isn't even in FIFA.
It's not even in FIFA
This is
yet.
officially not even some FIFA shit. This is some like unbelievable. If you ran this in real life, you would get absolutely cooked. But
Yeah, you would get demolished.
Courtois was a goalkeeper. The three defenders were Hakimi, Van Dijk, and Cancelo. The midfielders were De Bruyne, Casemiro, Modric, and then the front four was Messi, Benzema, Haaland, and Mbappe. And before I pass this off to you and get your thoughts, I just want to say that front four, that right there is like the front four of dreams. I mean, Messi, Benzema, Haaland, and Mbappe. I mean, Jesus, that's literally the front four of dreams right there.
I have a couple of problems with it, but I think I don't know if I completely agree with how they change it. I think I'm always just going to be an old stand. I like the 4-3-3. I like when they're able to give more credit to some players that might not get the credit they usually get. I mean, like Guardiola. I think they should have kept it a 4-3-3 and have Guardiola and Van Dijk in there. So because look, not a lot of people know who Guardiola unless you're like a real like football like head. Not a lot of people know Guardiola as how good he is. He's a great center back. He got cooked by Messi in the World Cup.
He did that.
Obviously,
Yeah.
that's unfortunately what he's most famous for now. But he's still a world class center back. I mean, arguably he's better than Van Dijk. I think as a player he's better than Van Dijk. But
Right
obviously
now, maybe in
he has
2023.
that.
Yeah.
Van Dijk still has that aura of what he did in the past. But the other player I think got extremely snubbed was Vinicius Jr. I think
He wasn't
Vinicius
even a
Jr.
nominee.
wasn't even a nominee. I think that's disgraceful. I would have had him in there instead of Erling Haaland. And look, I've been about on this Haaland hate train for a little while. I think Haaland's numbers are super inflated. I think he's overrated. I think what Vinicius did in that Champions League run in 2022, it was something that he was just came out as the best winger in football. I mean that's just what he was, the best winger in the world. And obviously he scored the winning goal in the Champions League final. He was the deciding factor, and I think he was just snubbed of this. I think he deserved to be mentioned up here with those names. He deserved to be up there with Mbappe, with Benzema and Messi. And realistically, I look at Haaland. That's another one that's just martyred by recency bias. I mean, he's able to smash hat tricks against Aston Villa and Crystal Palace and shit, but Vinny's over here scoring in Champions League finals. I mean,
Yeah.
I, I don't know. It's whatever. I mean, I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. I just think that's just how it is.
So basically, Real Madrid were robbed a lot tonight in this award
That's
ceremony.
that. That's how I feel.
I do agree with you though. I think in general, I think the switch to this 3-3-4 formation for the World 11 is an absolute joke because I think it's basically catering it now more than ever to
To
attackers,
attackers.
and attackers get recognized more so than any other position in football, obviously because they're the ones that are bagging in the goals, and I have no problem with that. But ultimately, this should have been the stereotypical 4-3-3, and Gvardiol should have been in there. He deserved to be in this 11. Ultimately, he was. Him and Van Dijk were probably the best two center backs. And I think if you are going to play this formation with a 3-3-4, then I would even put Gvardiol over Van Dijk because realistically, I think Gvardiol had a better year. I think in 2022, he cemented himself as one of, if not
I
the
think he's just a
best.
better. Yeah, I think he's a better footballer.
And I think he's also on the up and up. And what we saw from him in the World Cup, you could make the argument he was the best center back in the World Cup. I mean, everyone remembers him getting cooked by Messi, but everyone got cooked by
It's
Messi. I
fucking
mean,
Messi.
this is nothing new. Obviously, sometimes you're going to get cooked by the greatest player of all time, but in general, the body of work he's put together is absolutely unbelievable, and he's such a good player. And I don't think he's getting the respect he deserves because of the fact he plays for RB Leipzig for his club. But ultimately, that is going to change very, very soon. I think he is going to be going to either La Liga or the Premier League very soon, probably for 100 million. I keep talking about that, but like it is what it is. I mean, ultimately, I'm not over here gonna go start a riot because he didn't make it, but I do think he did deserve it. And then ultimately, I know Haaland has been great so far this season, but this is once again this is a team that's recognizing
This is
last
a whole
season.
season thing. Like
This is
Haaland's
last
only
season.
been at City for not even a full season. I mean,
Exactly.
it's a bit ridiculous.
And that's what I was going to get into. I do agree with you. I'm not going to reiterate a lot of the points you made, but in general, I think Vinicius should have been in there over Haaland because this is literally recognizing 2022, and Vinicius had an incredible 2022, ultimately winning that La Liga, winning the Champions League, being the decisive moment in winning the Champions League with his goal against Liverpool. He had a better 2022 than Haaland. Obviously, for next year, Haaland is definitely going to be in this 11 again. He's going to deserve it because he's breaking literally every record in the Premier League in terms of goals that you could probably break. I mean, he's putting up incredible record-breaking numbers. So for next year, I have no problem with Haaland making it. But for 2022, I think Vinicius did deserve it. He should have been in there. And the fact is, he wasn't even nominated, and that's the
Yeah,
biggest joke of it
not
all. The
nominated
fact
at
that he
all.
wasn't even nominated, that doesn't even make any sense because I think he should have been in the actual starting 11. But I mean, once again, I'm not really
Like
too.
Lewandowski made it in over him, and like Neymar, Ronaldo made it over him. Look,
Yeah, that's what I don't
I
understand.
remember people were starting fires in our TikTok comments about, oh, how is Messi here? Or it's look, I don't look. There's no one in the world that could tell me Ronaldo deserves to be even been nominated. He didn't do anything. Like, what
Yeah,
did he
no.
do? Get kicked out of United?
Got
That you don't
benched at
get.
the World Cup.
Yeah, you don't get awards for that, man. Look, I love Cristiano Ronaldo. He's a club legend. But look, what Vinicius did is what was literally just absolutely spectacular. I mean, to have that turnaround, his narrative, it was absolutely inspirational. And look, if it were up to me, it would have stuck to the 4-3-3. And if it was a 4-3-3, maybe he doesn't get in. He doesn't get in it anyway because I don't know if I
Yeah.
still put him over Mbappe. You could arguably say he had a better year than Mbappe last year because I mean Mbappe had a great World Cup final, but it was a bit not to his best in Europe or in club level.
And
But
ultimately, winning the French league doesn't
yeah,
really
that
mean
doesn't really
much for me.
say that doesn't say a lot
Yeah.
for your body of work. But that's besides the point.
Yeah, I think ultimately there was a few question marks and a few snubs, of course, but it's FIFA. I mean, it's always going to be question marks and snubs. I mean, it wouldn't be a FIFA award ceremony if there wasn't some controversy, obviously. So, what else could you possibly expect? But I think unless you have any final points to make about anything that happened tonight at the award ceremony, we can go ahead and wrap this one up.
I don't think that's it for me.
So obviously, subscribe to the channel for more football content. We're pumping out videos left, right, and center. I mean, there's been so much happening in the football world that we got to make videos about them. I mean, literally, this happened, and I said we got to make a video about this. I mean, this is breaking news.
Man, I already had showered, getting ready for bed.
Yeah, so we had to make a video about this. So subscribe for more football content. Let us know down below in the comments what you thought. Should Emi Martinez have won the best goalkeeper award? Do you have any problem with Argentina winning pretty much every single award? Do you
Whatever.
think that Gavardio should have been in the best 11? Let us know in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel. Drop a like on the video. But I'm Zach,
I'm G.
and we'll see y'all next time for another video. Peace.